Hello, my friends. One of the clearest signs that someone doesn't truly care about you is how they respond to your emotions. When you open up, whether it's about your struggles, your joys, or even your fears, do they lean in or do they brush you off? People who don't value you often treat your feelings as an inconvenience. They roll their eyes when you express sadness, laugh off your frustrations, or act as if your concerns are too small to matter. They might say things like, "You're overreacting, it's not that big of a deal," or the classic, "You're too sensitive." These words might seem harmless in the moment, but over time they chip away at your self-worth. You start questioning if your emotions are valid, if maybe you are being too dramatic, and slowly, without even realizing it, you begin to silence yourself. What makes emotional dismissal so damaging is that it invalidates your reality. When someone constantly tells you that your feelings don't matter, it can create a deep sense of self-doubt. You begin to hesitate before speaking up, wondering if you're making a big deal out of nothing. You might even start to bottle things up, convincing yourself that your pain isn't worth mentioning. This is how emotional neglect takes root. It doesn't happen all at once, but in small, quiet moments when you feel unseen and unheard. And the worst part, the people who do this rarely acknowledge the harm they cause. They don't see how their words or actions leave scars. And when confronted, they often turn it around on you. You always make things about feelings, or you're too emotional. When someone truly cares about you, they don't have to agree with everything you feel, but they do acknowledge it. They don't have to understand your pain fully, but they make space for it. Someone who values you listens, not to fix, not to judge, but to understand. They recognize that your emotions are a part of you, not something to be controlled or dismissed. On the other hand, someone who doesn't care will consistently shut you down. They may roll their eyes when you express frustration, change the subject when you talk about something that hurts you, or worse, use your vulnerability against you. And over time, this treatment teaches you one dangerous lesson: that your emotions are a burden. Think about how many times you've walked away from a conversation with someone feeling worse than before you started. Maybe you shared something deeply personal, hoping for support, only to receive indifference. Or perhaps you tried to explain why something hurt you, only to be told you were too much. These moments don't just hurt, they erode trust. When someone repeatedly dismisses your feelings, they're sending a clear message: you don't matter enough for me to listen. That's not love. That's not friendship. And that's not a relationship worth holding on to. If you've experienced this, know this: your emotions are not the problem. The problem is the people who refuse to hold space for them. It's easy to think, maybe if I explained it better, maybe if I toned it down, they'd finally understand. But the truth is, if someone consistently refuses to validate your feelings, it's not a misunderstanding. It's a choice. You don't need to shrink yourself to make someone else comfortable. You don't need to second guess your emotions just because someone else refuses to acknowledge them. You deserve to be surrounded by people who make you feel heard, not small. At the end of the day, the people who care about you will never make you feel like you need to convince them of your worth. They will listen even when they don't fully understand. They will support even when they don't have the perfect words. And most importantly, they will never make you feel like your emotions are too much to handle, because to them, your feelings will always matter. One of the most frustrating and painful realizations in life is when you discover that someone you thought cared about you only reaches out when they need something. At first, you may not even notice it. They text you out of the blue asking how you've been, and you feel a little spark of happiness. Finally, they're checking in. But then, after a few messages, it becomes clear why they reached out. They need a favor, advice, or some kind of support. The conversation that started with a friendly tone quickly turns into a transaction, leaving you feeling used rather than valued. Over time, you start recognizing a pattern. This person doesn't check on you just because they care. They check on you when they need something from you. It's a hard pill to swallow when you realize that someone you consider a friend, a colleague, or even a family member only sees you as a resource. Maybe they need money, a connection, emotional support, or even just someone to listen to their problems. But the moment they get what they want, they vanish. They don't ask about your struggles. They don't celebrate your victories, and they definitely don't make an effort to be present in your life when you have nothing to offer them. It stings because deep down, you hope that your relationship is built on genuine care, not convenience. You want to believe that they appreciate you for who you are, not just what you can do for them. But when the pattern keeps repeating itself, you can't ignore the truth any longer. What makes this behavior especially damaging is that it can make you question your worth. You might start wondering, am I only valuable when I'm useful? You may feel like you're nothing more than a stepping stone, a backup plan, or an emotional dumping ground. And the worst part, these people often disguise their selfishness as friendship. They might say, you know, I appreciate you, or I do the same for you, even though their actions prove otherwise. But real friendships aren't built on obligation. They aren't one-sided. They don't feel like a constant giving cycle with nothing in return. A true friend, a real supporter, doesn't just show up when they need something. They check in when they have no reason to. They celebrate your wins, not just rely on you when they're struggling. They listen, even when they don't need advice. They're present in your life, not just when it benefits them, but because they genuinely care. The people who only reach out when they need something aren't invested in you as a person. They're invested in what you provide. And no matter how much you want to believe otherwise, a relationship based on usefulness rather than genuine care will never be fulfilling. If you're dealing with this type of person, it's time to set boundaries. Pay attention to who checks on you just to see how you're doing. Notice who asks about your life with no agenda. And more importantly, observe who disappears when you have nothing to offer. It's okay to help people. It's beautiful to be generous. But you deserve relationships that don't feel like a business transaction. If someone can't be present for you in your hard times, if they never offer their support without expecting something in return, ask yourself, do they really care about you, or do they only care about what you can give? The painful truth is that not everyone in your life is meant to stay. Some people will only come around when it's convenient for them, and the more you try to hold on to them, the more drained you'll feel. But here's the good news. When you start distancing yourself from those who only take, you make room for those who genuinely give. You make space for people who see you, appreciate you, and care about you, not just when they need something, but always. And those are the relationships worth holding on to. One of the deepest wounds you can experience in relationships, whether with friends, family, or partners, is realizing that someone you care about doesn't show up for you. It's a heartbreaking moment when you need support, when you're counting on them to be there, and they're nowhere to be found. Maybe it was an important milestone in your life, your graduation, a big work achievement, or a personal struggle where you desperately needed a shoulder to lean on. And yet, when you reached out, they had excuses. They were too busy, they forgot, or worse, they made promises to be there and never followed through. And every time it happens, a little part of you starts questioning your worth, wondering if you're asking for too much, when in reality, you're just asking for the bare minimum. Loyalty, presence, and care. People who don't show up for you often have a pattern of inconsistency. They may act like they care when it's convenient for them, sending a quick text here and there, liking your posts, or making small talk when they see you. But when it truly matters, when you're struggling or celebrating something important, they disappear. And what makes it worse is that they always seem to have time for others. You watch as they show up for different people, attend events, and make efforts for those they prioritize, leaving you with the painful realization that you're just not one of them. It's not that they don't have the time or the ability, it's that they choose not to invest it in you. And that truth, no matter how much you try to ignore it, hurts. When someone repeatedly fails to show up for you, it erodes trust in the relationship. You stop believing their words because their actions don't match. You stop expecting them to be there, even though deep down you wish they would. And eventually you start pulling away, not out of anger, but out of exhaustion. There comes a point when you realize that begging someone to care, to make an effort, to stand by you in your highs and lows is not love. Love is showing up. Friendship is showing up, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's not easy. The people who truly value you don't leave you wondering if they care, they prove it. The worst part about dealing with people who don't show up for you is the self-doubt it creates. You start wondering, am I expecting too much? Am I being needy? Maybe they have their own struggles. And while it's true that everyone has their own battles, real relationships are built on mutual effort. If you find yourself constantly making excuses for why someone isn't there for you, it's time to step back and ask yourself, would I do the same to them? If the answer is no, then you already know that the relationship is one-sided. You deserve people who care enough to be present, not just in words, but in action. Setting boundaries with people who don't show up for you is crucial. It's painful to accept that someone you love doesn't prioritize you the way you do them, but it's even more painful to keep waiting for them to change. Stop overextending yourself for people who never return the favor. Stop pouring love, energy, and time into relationships that leave you feeling empty. Pay attention to who is there when you need them, not just when it's convenient, not just when you have something to offer, but when you're struggling, when you need encouragement, when you need someone to stand beside you. Those are the people who truly belong in your life. At the end of the day, love, whether in friendships, family, or relationships, is about showing up. It's about being present, being reliable, and making the people you care about feel valued. The ones who don't show up for you are showing you exactly where you stand in their lives. Believe them. And instead of wasting your energy on those who leave you hanging, invest it in the ones who would never let you stand alone. Those are the relationships that truly matter. Have you ever had a conversation with someone where no matter what you say, the topic always seems to shift back to them? You could be opening up about a difficult time in your life, sharing an exciting moment, or just trying to have a balanced discussion, and yet somehow they always redirect the focus back to themselves. It's frustrating, exhausting, and over time, deeply hurtful. These people don't just dominate conversations, they make you feel invisible. They treat every interaction as an opportunity to talk about their problems, their achievements, their experiences, leaving you wondering if they ever truly see you. It's not just about talking too much. It's about their inability to genuinely care about what's going on in your life unless it serves their own interests. The pattern becomes clear the more you interact with them. You tell them about a tough day at work, hoping for a little support, and instead of offering comfort, they launch into a long speech about how their day was even worse. You express excitement about a personal milestone, and instead of celebrating you, they find a way to compare it to something they've done. And when you need advice, they don't take the time to listen deeply. They just start talking about a time when they went through something similar, often making their experience seem more important. At first, you may brush it off, thinking maybe they just didn't realize what they were doing. But over time, you start to realize that this isn't just a habit. It's who they are. People who make everything about themselves often lack self-awareness. They may not even realize how dismissive they are because they are so absorbed in their own world. But here's the truth. Someone who truly cares about you will make space for your emotions, your stories, and your experiences. They won't just wait for their turn to speak. They will listen. They will ask follow-up questions. They will sit with you in your joys and struggles instead of constantly redirecting the spotlight onto themselves. But when you're dealing with someone who is self-centered, you'll notice that they rarely, if ever, do that. Conversations with them always feel one-sided, like you're just an audience member in the movie of their life. Over time, this behavior can leave you feeling unheard, unappreciated, and even resentful. When someone constantly makes everything about themselves, it diminishes your experiences and emotions. It can make you feel like your struggles aren't valid, like your wins aren't worth celebrating, like your voice doesn't matter. And the worst part, you may start internalizing this behavior, convincing yourself that you're just not as interesting or important. But that's not true. You are more than worthy of being heard, valued, and seen. And anyone who can't make space for you in a conversation isn't really invested in your well being. They're just using you as a sounding board for their own ego. The healthiest relationships, whether friendships, family bonds, or romantic partnerships, are built on mutuality. A real friend, a real partner, a real supporter will make an effort to balance the conversation. They will recognize when you need to be heard. They will celebrate your achievements without making them about themselves. And most importantly, they will acknowledge that relationships are not supposed to be one-sided. If you find yourself constantly being drained by someone who dominates every discussion and never reciprocates genuine interest, it might be time to create some distance. You can't keep investing energy in people who only take, never give. At the end of the day, relationships should feel nourishing, not exhausting. You deserve people in your life who see you, who listen to you, and who care about your experiences just as much as they care about their own. If someone repeatedly makes everything about themselves, believe them. They aren't looking for a meaningful connection, they're looking for an audience. And you are so much more than that. Trust is the foundation of every meaningful relationship, whether it's a friendship, a romantic partnership, or a family bond. Trust is what allows us to feel safe, valued, and respected. But when someone betrays that trust, the damage can be deep and lasting. It's not just about the betrayal itself, it's about what it represents. It means that the person you confided in, the person you believed had your best interests at heart, has shown you that they don't respect the connection you share. Betrayal can come in many forms: spreading your secrets, lying to you, going behind your back, or breaking promises. And each time it happens, it chips away at the foundation of the relationship, leaving you questioning everything. Was I wrong to trust them? Was I blind to the signs? Did they ever truly care about me at all? One of the most painful aspects of betrayal is that it often comes from people we least expect. It's easy to guard yourself against strangers, but when betrayal comes from someone close to you, it shakes your sense of security. Maybe they promised to keep your confidence, only for you to find out that they shared your private struggles with others. Maybe they assured you they would stand by your side, only to abandon you when you needed them most. Or maybe they broke a commitment that was deeply important to you, leaving you feeling foolish for ever believing in them. And the worst part, they may not even acknowledge the harm they've done. Instead of taking responsibility, they minimize it, gaslight you, or act like you're overreacting. And that only deepens the wound. When someone betrays your trust, it doesn't just hurt, it changes you. It makes you wary of opening up to others. You start questioning whether you can truly rely on anyone. You might even blame yourself, wondering if you were naive for believing in them. But here's the truth. Trusting someone is not a weakness, it's a strength. The problem is not that you placed your trust in someone. The problem is that they chose to break it. You are not at fault for expecting honesty, loyalty, and respect. Those are the bare minimum requirements of any meaningful relationship. The real issue lies with the person who saw your trust as something disposable rather than something to cherish and protect. The aftermath of betrayal is complicated. A part of you may want to forgive and move on, hoping things can go back to how they used to be. Another part of you may feel anger, resentment, and an overwhelming desire to cut that person out of your life. And while forgiveness can be powerful, it doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean ignoring the lesson you've learned. Trust, once broken, is incredibly difficult to rebuild. And in some cases, it shouldn't be rebuilt at all. If someone has shown you repeatedly that they cannot be trusted, you have every right to walk away. You have every right to protect yourself from further hurt. Setting boundaries after betrayal is not about being bitter. It's about valuing yourself. It's about recognizing that you deserve relationships where trust is honored, not taken for granted. If someone has betrayed you once, you need to watch their actions, not just listen to their apologies. Do they show genuine remorse? Do they take steps to rebuild trust through consistent, honest behavior? Or do they expect you to move on while they continue to act the same way? You don't owe anyone blind forgiveness. And you certainly don't owe them continued access to your life if they have proven they cannot be trusted. At the end of the day, trust is a gift. It is something precious that should only be given to those who are willing to honor it. If someone betrays your trust, they are showing you who they truly are. Believe them. And instead of wasting energy on trying to fix a relationship that has been broken, invest that energy in the people who have always been trustworthy, the ones who have shown you through their actions, not just their words, that they are worthy of your trust. Those are the relationships that deserve your time, your heart, and your loyalty. One of the clearest signs that someone doesn't truly care about you is when they see your success as a threat instead of something to celebrate. In a healthy relationship, whether it's friendship, family, or a romantic partnership, there should be a foundation of mutual encouragement. When you win, the people who love you should be genuinely happy for you. But when someone constantly turns every achievement into a competition, it's a sign that their concern isn't for you, it's for their own ego. These are the people who can't stand to see you rise unless they are rising higher. Instead of clapping for you, they compare. Instead of cheering for you, they try to outdo you. And instead of recognizing your journey, they make it all about themselves. At first, you might not even notice it. Maybe it starts subtly. Little comments that make you second guess yourself. You tell them about a promotion at work, and instead of celebrating, they immediately start talking about how they expect an even bigger one soon. You share a personal milestone, and they downplay it, reminding you of how they've already done that. And then over time, it escalates. They start copying your ideas, one-upping your achievements, or even sabotaging your efforts so they can stay on top. What should be a relationship based on mutual growth turns into an unspoken battle, one that you never signed up for. This kind of competitive dynamic is draining because it turns what should be joyous moments into stressful ones. You start hesitating before sharing good news because you already know their reaction won't be genuine happiness. You start holding back parts of yourself, your ambitions, your plans, your dreams, because deep down, you know they won't be received with the love and support you deserve. And worst of all, you might start questioning your own worth, wondering if you're the problem. But you're not. The problem is not you achieving too much. The problem is their inability to celebrate you without feeling insecure about themselves. True support comes from a place of security and love. Someone who genuinely cares about you will understand that your success does not take away from theirs. They will celebrate your wins, lift you up when you're struggling, and remind you that there is room for everyone to thrive. But a competitive person operates from scarcity, not abundance. They believe that if you are succeeding, it somehow means they are falling behind. They don't see success as something that can be shared. They see it as something that must be won. And because of that, their relationships suffer. If you find yourself constantly in competition with someone who is supposed to be in your corner, it's time to step back and evaluate the relationship. Ask yourself, do they genuinely support me, or do they only engage with me when they feel superior? Do I feel emotionally safe sharing my wins with them, or do I leave interactions feeling drained and belittled? Your answer will tell you everything you need to know. And if someone consistently shows you that they'd rather compete with you than celebrate you, believe them. You don't need that energy in your life. The truth is, you deserve people who clap when you win, people who see your success as a shared joy, not a personal loss, people who remind you that there is more than enough greatness to go around. If someone is constantly trying to outshine you, it's not a reflection of your success. It's a reflection of their own insecurities, and you don't have to shrink yourself to make them feel comfortable. Keep growing, keep shining, and most importantly, keep surrounding yourself with people who want to see you win. Some people don't just take up space in your life, they consume it. They leave you feeling exhausted, drained, and emotionally depleted after every interaction. At first, it might not seem obvious. Maybe they come across as someone who just needs support, a friend to lean on, or a listening ear. But over time, you start noticing a pattern. Every conversation revolves around them, every moment together leaves you feeling worn out, and no matter how much you give, it's never enough. These people don't just ask for help occasionally, they expect it constantly. They demand your emotional energy without ever offering it in return. And the worst part, you feel guilty even questioning it because they've conditioned you to believe that their needs must come first. When someone drains your energy, it often starts with small things: constant complaints, endless drama, or a never-ending list of problems that they expect you to solve. You become their emotional dumping ground, the person they turn to whenever they need to unload. But do they ever ask how you're doing? Do they offer support when you're struggling? Or do they just take, leaving you emotionally drained every single time? Energy drainers don't consider your well-being. They don't stop to think about how their behavior affects you. They operate from a mindset of self-preservation, where their comfort and needs come first at the expense of yours.